Hey everybody, welcome back to the Better Workdays podcast, the show that gives you free, fast, and actionable advice on how to create better workdays for yourself and for the people around you. I'm your host, Andy Morrison from Real Custom Training, and my guest this week is a first in that the first person who asked about coming on the podcast, which was a thrill for me. And then I told her too, I said, I've been actually thinking of asking you. So it was a great fit. The guest is Allison Rich. Allison was the Human Resources Coordinator at TEEG, the Thompson Ecumenical Empowerment Group. And I just before the interview, I updated her in our system at Real Custom Training, our CSM, because she's now the Associate Director for TEEG. And Allison and I met it might have even been 3 years ago now, which is crazy how time flies. But Allison took a program with us. We did a series of workshops that we called the Compassionate Leadership Program. And we did it through the Putnam Rotary Club and opened it up to nonprofits in the region. So Allison attended through TEEG, and at the time, the director of TEEG, Ann Miller, participated as well. And Allison has also taken a Managing Multiple Generations workshop with us. She's a young leader in Northeastern Connecticut in the nonprofit sector, who I'm really excited to talk about. She's someone who definitely stood out in the workshops that she was in. And I remember I would think to myself, I hope TEEG develops her and treats her well, because she's definitely somebody that, if she was in my organization, I would have Allison in mind for someone to keep and to help grow with the organization. And again, this is part of a series of episodes we're going to do where I want to start bringing in local leaders from Northeastern Connecticut. And in particular, if there's anybody like Allison who's done some training and learning and working with Real Custom Training, she can give us a little bit of that perspective too. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome now Allison Rich to Better Workdays. Welcome, Allison.
Hi, Andy. That was quite an introduction.
You like that? Was that okay?
That was very kind, very generous of you.
I felt like I had to be more perfect. Like it's like having company over the house. Usually it's just me, and I'm like, oh boy. Yeah. But I meant what you said. You definitely really stood out in the workshops, and we'd have some conversations after the sessions too. And you always gave me good insight on things that might be helpful for young leaders in the area.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I had a fantastic time at both of the workshops that I attended with you. And like thinking back, I think you're right. It's been like almost 3 years at this point that we've known each other in a professional capacity. And it's just always been really, really nice for me to know that I have you as a resource in the community, to be like, Andy, like, what do you think about this? Like, would you offer this training, or are you experiencing this with other people that you're seeing? So it's been a great, partnership, I think, between the two of us.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. And it's great for me too, because I was just telling you off air that the feedback from local professionals is one of the most valuable things that people can offer me, because we want to make sure everything we're doing is relevant, and you can't determine that in a bubble. You've got to be talking to people that are out there, and especially it's great to have connections in the nonprofit sector, because I know that there's going to be challenges unique to your sector than some of the manufacturing clients that we have.
Yep. Yeah. And I think nonprofits as well, it's difficult sometimes for us to find training opportunities, especially ones that are local and that they understand, the community of people that we are serving, the donors and the volunteer bases that we have, like up here in Northeastern Connecticut, as a community. So sometimes, having opportunities that are only in Hartford or only in New London, while they're great and we'll take what we can get, spending an entire day out of the office traveling to a training, when I could do a half day in Putnam and still spend, the afternoon in the office, or vice versa, is just such an additional benefit. And then we're getting these resources too, that I'm able to send my staff to you and have people connect with you, outside as a volunteer, as somebody who's engaged with us, is just, an additional benefit on top of getting training from somebody local.
Yeah. And you nailed it. It's like singing to the choir when you say the half day thing. because I'll do full days if a client wants it, but I always try to tell them, like, you're better off with a half day. People are spent by the end of a full day session, so much so that there's nothing being retained sometimes.
Exactly.
And you know, and I don't know about I'm sure for the nonprofits it might be different, but when I look at the some of the competitors out there, you know, I saw a full day workshop in like Middlebury the other day. So that would be a hike for anyone around here. And it was literally 5 times the cost of our programming. And I just thought, maybe I should think, wow, we need to charge more. But I just thought, man, like we are a good investment for folks. But that's why, because we want that relationship with the local organizations. We don't want to just fly in a consultant for a day-long workshop and they never see those people again. You know, because I live in the area. I'm part of the community that TEEG serves. So it means a lot to me that, yeah, you know, here we are 3 years or 2 years after the first workshop, and there's still a relationship between RCT and TEEG. And I did want to ask you too, I know this will be hard to do because of how much TEEG does, but in a nutshell for folks, if they're not aware of TEEG, Thompson Ecumenical Empowerment Group, what does TEEG do?
Yeah. So we originated in the mid 80s. We've always been located here in Thompson, but we are essentially the human services organization for Thompson, Pomfret, and Woodstock. We also are the youth service bureau for those 3 towns and the town of Putnam. So we have services for every stage of life. And because we are a grassroots organization, we really get to serve the community as the needs arise. And so sometimes that means we have programs that are going to run for the life of the agency, like food security, for instance. We are always going to have a community market, which some folks may know is a traditional food pantry. So we're always going to be serving food to folks. But I think a really great example is when I joined TEEG back in 2021, we started helping folks in the community register for COVID vaccines, because initially the CDC website was very difficult for people to understand. You know, some seniors out there who were eligible to receive vaccinations first didn't have email addresses, and you had to have an email address, right, to be able to register for an appointment. So we did this short-term program. It probably lasted about a year, where we had case managers. We would go out to town halls or libraries, have folks come in person, and we would help them maybe create an email address, get an appointment, get them out to their appointment. You know, we laminated cards for people if they needed that. So that was a short-term need that the community had. And now, I mean, of course, if something like that came up again, we would help. But so we really are lucky to be able to meet those needs as they come up. And so sometimes our programs are changing. And I think that's why people are like, what do you do at TEEG? Because we have so many things going at once, because we really try to meet the needs of everyone who walks through the door.
And how about your own? You mentioned you started there in 2021. What a great time to jump in. And as I mentioned, you've moved up in your role there. You were the human resources administrator, and now you're the associate director. So how did that how's that pathway been? How did you start moving up in TEEG, and what made you what made you decide, as someone with, you know, a capable person who I'm sure could go elsewhere, what made you decide to want to stay and grow there, and how did that happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, I came to TEEG in January of 2021, and I had actually volunteered with TEEG while I was a student at the Woodstock Academy. And so I had a familiarity with TEEG, you know, for most of my adult life. And I just always really admired the work they were doing, but I wasn't living around here right after school. And so when I moved back to the area, I was working for a couple of different domestic relations attorneys in Worcester. And as I realized I was going to be staying in this area permanently, I really wanted to work where I was living. And I went back and I listened to your podcast this morning with Jim Zahansky, and I think you had a similar experience where you kind of talked about, you know, you're working in Massachusetts, but you really wanted to be engaged in the community in Northeastern Connecticut. And so I started looking around and was finally able to find that there was a position opening at TEEG for a fiscal and human resources assistant. And so that's what I was initially hired as. And the goal there was my predecessor, Jenny Fountain, knew that she would probably be coming up on retirement within 5 years of me being hired. And so the goal was for me to be able to train to take over for Jenny as our fiscal administrator. And Jenny did retire after 28 and a half years this past June. So I'm really excited for her, but I miss her like crazy. And so I really trained under her and under Ann Miller to come up. And as we identified that the agency was growing and we really needed somebody to be looking and handling human resources, because Anne just didn't have the time. I mean, she had so much on her plate as the executive director, like she did not need to be dealing with onboarding people and paperwork and things like that. So I kind of transitioned into doing some more human resources than financial, because at the time I wasn't sure which role I really wanted to lean into. And then eventually, as Carl Assikainen took over as executive director last year, he asked me to step in as his associate. And it really kind of encompassed finance and human resources, which has turned out to be the best of both worlds for me. I really, really enjoy it. So that's how I got to where I am now at TEEG, nearly 5 years in.
Yeah, so you really were getting the comprehensive overview of the place, the numbers and the people side of everything.
Absolutely. I always felt like I managed no one and everyone at the same time because I didn't have any direct reports. But as human resources and in a small agency, if you've ever walked through the building of TEEG, it's pretty cramped in here. I was really wanting to advocate for the staff that we had and just make sure that they felt seen and felt heard at an administrative level. And if they needed something, they knew there was a person here, separate from their manager, separate from the executive director, that they could come just chat with if they needed to. So I really always wanted to make sure that I was kind of managing those folks from that perspective.
And as you've moved into your new role, I know you had mentioned imposter syndrome might be something we could talk about today. Was that on your mind in relation to moving up? Did moving up kind of raise that for you, or tell me about, what it is about imposter syndrome that you've experienced?
Absolutely. I had actually never even heard the term. And Ann Miller said it to me one day when we were just having a conversation. I'm sure I was expressing some sort of like doubt about myself. And she was like, that's imposter syndrome. You got to knock that off. And I was like, nobody had ever said that to me. So it was like putting a diagnosis to something, right? It just felt pretty validating at the time. And there have certainly been times in these roles, in any job that I've held, that like, I think you sit there and you're maybe in the middle of a conversation or you're trying to prepare, a project, and you're just feeling like, I'm not ready for this. I can't do this. I remember, going into my first few weeks as a paralegal thinking like, I can't believe people have just handed over files to me. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. And I did, right? I mean, I certainly figured it out and I could handle it, but just not having that confidence in myself that, okay, I was promoted for a reason, right? Somebody saw something in me and has confidence that I can do this. And so I need to feel that way too, to be able to move myself forward. So it has been something that's come up. And I think what I experienced almost right away after taking this position, which I feel like is one of those experiences like you'll almost never forget, is I was at a dinner with some colleagues and just some members of the community, and I was speaking to a woman at our table whose colleague had given a presentation to TEEG recently. And so I was just saying, hey, I think your colleague did fantastic on this presentation. I just really love that the content that she's speaking about, she doesn't say it in a way that makes you feel like you can't understand it. She kind of brings it down and she's speaking to us all like we are regular people, right? Like we don't need to make this any larger than it is. And I just always feel that's very humanizing to everyone, because you never know who is following what at the table and who is understanding at any particular level. So I think speaking to everyone just kind of in broad strokes sometimes is really helpful on a complex topic. And another person at the table turned to me and said, you thought that was a good presentation? I thought it was awful. And I was like, oh my God, like, am I not understanding things correctly? Am I not like, do I not know this topic well enough? Like, do I have to understand at this really low level and I should be, expanding my knowledge more than I can? So I just felt really like, oh gosh, maybe I don't know what's happening here and I don't know what I'm talking about. So that was really kind of like eye-opening for me right after taking this role. And I was like, had to go to Carl and say, like, am I okay here? Like, do I know what I'm doing? And he was like, you're fine. Like, you've got it, you're here for a reason. We got to just keep going.
Did the person expand at all on what they didn't like about the presentation? Was it the content and the ideas, or the delivery?
I think it was the content that, this particular presentation was like around a program that was being offered to TEEG. And I thought things were really going well with it. I was happy with the delivery and how they were managing this program for us. And this other person did not think that they were doing a good job at all, and that they were kind of missing the mark. And so I was like, oh no, am I missing the mark too? Like, do I not see this at the high enough level that it should be? And that really wasn't the case. I mean, it was just kind of a differing of personal opinions, and maybe neither of us was right, but it certainly, the experience stuck with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's the thing, when you as you deal with imposter syndrome, I think you become better able to reach that conclusion of, oh, we just see it differently.
Yes.
But before you really work on it, any disagreement kind of sends you in that direction of questioning yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, am I the one here who doesn't get it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And feeling like, do I belong here? Right. I think because I am a young leader, and while I've been with the organization for 5 years, which I do think, for some people is a long time, feeling like, okay, am I worthy of sitting in this seat? Right. Like, do people trust the knowledge that I have, and see me for what I'm trying to do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think did you find you had to strike the balance between letting people know that you know what you're doing, while also being authentic about what you don't know yet?
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yep. Yeah. Because I think there is always more that you can learn, like at any stage of life, right? Like, no matter what your age, no matter what your education level, your experience level at a job, I always think that you can learn from the people around you. You can learn from different experiences. So I never want to go into anything thinking I know all of this and it's 100% right, and that's the only way it can be. And I think that's something that we've talked about, in the trainings that I've come to with you, is that, like, you have to go into this with that open and growth mindset, right? That there's always an opportunity here. And if you're closed off, then how are you going to progress as a leader, or even just progress as a professional?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it really, I think that growth mindset can help in those cases too, because then you kind of can have two concurrent goals. Like, there may be an objective you have to achieve in your new role, and maybe you don't have the skills yet to reach it. And that can really trigger that imposter syndrome. But if you've also embraced growth mindset, then at the same time, in trying to reach that objective, growth is the goal. It's, yeah. Oh, okay, I've got to grow in certain ways in order to hit that objective. It's okay that I didn't walk through the door on day one fully capable of hitting it, but I have an obligation now to try to get myself up to speed and learn it. And hopefully everyone around you would give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, maybe they didn't know that, but they're learning it.
Yes.
And the worst thing you can do is BS anyone about what you don't know.
Yeah.
Because then your credibility is just shot. And let me on that note, I queued up one thing from a workshop I wanted to show you.
Yeah. So
with imposter syndrome, right? It's essentially saying, like, I lack credibility, but no one else knows it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're worried, like, they're going to figure it out someday. They're going to. So these are, I don't remember the source for this. But I had read this once. It said the 3 keys to credibility, or I've seen it also 3 keys to trust, is the first. So you're the new leader. First one is, people need to know you want to do the right thing. So you want to do the right thing for TEEG, and you want to do it the right way. That's step 1. And then the second step is, they need to know you're capable of doing the right thing.
Yeah. That
you've actually got the skills to pull it off. And then the third one is, you have to actually do the right thing in order to fully establish credibility and earn their trust.
Yeah. You've got to deliver.
Does this jive with your experience?
Yeah, I think so. Because like I said, I think when I first started out as a professional, I always felt like, oh my gosh, I have to put on this facade, right? Like I have to convince people that I know what I'm doing, even if I'm not totally confident in it, even though I should have been confident in it. And I wouldn't have wanted to BS my way through situations like that. And I think the longer you stay in the field, and I think also the more you're surrounded by people who are empowering you and leading you in the way that you need, it's going to reduce some of this, right? Like you're going to be able to say, yes, I am credible and here's why, right? And it's not an absolute thing, but it's enough. I went back and I looked through some notes today because I really enjoy, of course, coming to trainings with you and then just trying to absorb knowledge like wherever I can, right? Because like I said, I just don't think we're ever done learning as people. And particularly like in my role here, I don't ever want to stop learning in any capacity. And I sat in on a discussion about imposter syndrome with a couple of different folks that I had heard about online. And what I wrote down from that training was that imposter syndrome is a product of the systems we're in, not our individual failings. And like I sometimes, if it's like out of sight for me, it's out of mind. So I feel like I have to go and like I got to tape that like on my keyboard or something to be looking at all the time, right? That it's
Absolutely.
sometimes it's how we're feeling around us. And I think as somebody who there have been times where I have felt, and I hope maybe this resonates with people, that I was not the kid who grew up and you could say, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? Like I would be like, I have no idea. Like even into adulthood, I could be like, I have no idea. There were so few things that I was like very certain about doing, but I always just knew that I wanted to work in a helping role in some capacity. I didn't really know what that was going to be. And I'm a first generation college student. I'm the first person in my family to get a bachelor's degree. And that was a really big deal. Like there have been a few key things in my life that have felt like they've kind of like turned a stone almost, or that, you know, it could have gone the other way and it all would have worked out. But those are things kind of internally in the systems around me that I think have led to some of those feelings too. And that's just something personally that you have to work on, right? It's not about the environment I'm working in or the people I'm surrounded with. It's like those internal voices that you have to be able to be like, nope, I can still do this, right? Like, look at what I've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. I think so much of it is so much work stuff actually is you stuff.
Yeah.
That you can, you know, and even sometimes in workshops, people will, you know, they'll have a problem with a coworker or something's driving them crazy. And it's like, well, maybe the thing to work on is, why does that bother you?
Yes.
Does it have to bother you that much? What's going on with you that's making it bother you that much? Because you can't control that other person. Maybe you could have a conversation and influence them, but you don't control them. Yeah, I think so much of it is, like you said, it's really working on yourself. And that's like a counterintuitive part of leadership. I think sometimes we think with leadership, oh, I have to be totally selfless. I have to only worry about my team. I have to only worry about, and it, you know, and even parenthood's similar. And it's like, well, no, you got to take care of yourself first and foremost. And then everything, you'll be better able to serve other people and better able to take care of your kids. But it really starts and ends with you, and you got to put the work in on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really fantastic, or at least the experiences I've had at TEEG, in the really transparent kind of culture that we have here, because we're a small team, you know, we're roughly 20 people in our building on our full and part-time staff, and, you know, working under Ann and with Carl. I always really appreciated coming in and like having a leader that can start a staff meeting by saying, hey, listen, guys, I didn't sleep well last night, or, you know, I had a ton of running around to do this weekend. I'm feeling a little frazzled coming into this meeting, or, you know, I'm feeling really excited. Like I'm going to dinner with some friends tonight or something. And like just having that level of transparency around, if I'm not my best self right now, it's not because of those who are in the room with me. Like maybe it is a personal thing. And so like humanizing a little bit to make sure that, you know, it allows everybody, I think, to like take a breath, right? And be like, oh, okay, it's not just me who's sitting here anxious or worried or excited about something that's coming up that might be distracting me a little bit. Like I can put that aside and now we can have our staff meeting. And I know if my leader doesn't seem like they're at their best, they're not upset with me. They're not failing as a leader. Like, they are human.
Yeah, that's they really set the tone for that. And like you said, kind of give everybody permission to be human and be, vulnerable and say, I'm having a crap day. You probably can see it on my face.
Yeah. And I think treating our employees like they're human, right? And I think what's really special about TEEG, and something I really remember when I sat through the compassionate leadership training with you a couple of years ago, and I was the only person I think in the room who was not in a leadership role at that time. I was aspiring to be in a leadership role. And hearing some of the frustrations and the stressors that some of these other leaders were having around their staff, I felt like, oh my gosh, like, if Anne felt this way about me, I'd be like, oh no, like, just come talk to me about it, right? Like, let's have a conversation and probably work through it, and feel a little bit better. And maybe you can get past it quicker, right? And then you can get back to doing the work that you need to do, serving the people that you're serving.
Yeah, you've touched on two things that are like root cause of so many issues I hear about from people. One, when you talked about needing to learn, and an unwillingness to learn, in my experience, is so often the cause of problems in the workplace. Like, most what you might call a bad leader or toxic employee, usually a common trait is they're not willing to learn, either about themselves or about new behaviors, not willing to try new things. And then the second one you just alluded to is just avoiding conversations, addressing things in ways other than going directly to the other person and talking to them about whatever's going on.
Yeah.
Those are two things. If an organization can get everybody on board with those two things, then the laundry list of related issues would be mitigated a great deal. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I feel like you hear constantly, like probably in every frame of your life, right, that communication is either an issue or it's going really well. And that's usually what I think, if we can just go to somebody, like, I would rather have, Carl come to me right away and be like, hey, listen, I think this could have gone better, or here's, something that I'd like to offer you, or, hey, that was fantastic. Like, it can go both ways, right? It doesn't always have to feel like it's this punitive or like some type of course correction. It can be praise as well, like with the folks you're working with. So just having that open level of communication and realizing at the end of the day, like, we're all here just trying to do the work, and we might have different strategies or philosophies on how to get there, but we're all here for the same purpose.
And Allison, you mentioned a couple minutes ago, you said that we were talking about, people can say, I didn't get any sleep last night, or I'm underwater with this project, and you said, but all of that's okay if we're working towards the same purpose.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you about, for in the nonprofit sector, I think especially, how important have you found that shared mission and purpose to be, from a leadership perspective? And do you find it all, one of the workshops you took with us was managing multiple generations. And I know I've seen claims out there that Gen Z and millennials maybe are a little bit more purpose driven than other generations. Have you found that? And in general, how is that, purpose driven leadership manifested at TEEG?
Yeah, I mean, certainly as a millennial myself, I have always tried to seek out work that I felt like was in some way serving other people. I did work for a period of time, in the domestic relations, like law field in Massachusetts, and that in some aspects was serving people, right? We were helping people, maybe adopt a child or different things to that nature. And I felt by the end of it that I wasn't serving the population of people that I wanted to serve. And so I've got 3 Gen Z, staff members right now, which I think is the most we've had. And they're all fantastic. And I do see, when we put out ads for hiring, I do see a lot of kids that are coming out of college and that or even, looking for an internship, that are like, I want to give back. I want to be involved in something that is larger than myself. And sometimes there's, of course, restrictions because, nonprofits are not a corporation, right? We're not operating off of, production and revenue in that way. But I think everybody, that works at TEEG is here for the mission in some way or another. And sometimes that is, I really have a desire to work with parents or with, young children in our early childhood education. And I want to make sure that these kids are getting a really good, healthy start, and these parents are doing as best they can, because I know how that's going to impact my community in the long run, right? And then sometimes we have folks who are like, I want to work with the seniors because I think they're underserved. And so the avenue or like the approach that our staff may take may be different, but at the end of the day, it's all about making sure the folks in our community are served, and our community is better because of it, because we all live in our community. Everybody who works at TEEG lives in this local community. So therefore it's benefiting us and our families outside of this building too, right?
And do you not to put you on the spot with this question,
Yeah.
but do you find with the people that directly report to you,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of which aspect of TEEG's mission is their biggest driver, do you feel like you know that for each of them?
I think it's empowering people to live as independently as they can. Because we have some folks who are receiving services from us that have been utilizing services for years, and they may utilize services for as long as they're in this area, and that's okay. And then we see some people for a season of their life that maybe they have been laid off and they are in a tough spot financially. And so, they're feeling food insecure, and food would benefit their family until they're able to find a new job. Like there's so many reasons that people come to TEEG, but I really think creating that culture of empowerment and advocating for the folks that we're working with and showing them that, look, with a little bit of support, you can do this, like this, and teaching them this may just be a season in your life, and you can get back to where you want to be, or grow up to where you want to be. And a lot of those folks, they turn around and they volunteer for us, or they get to a point where maybe they can even donate to us. And that's incredible. And I think those are the reasons that I see a lot of folks coming through the doors. And those are the stories that touch all of us, right? That like we see a youth who maybe was referred to the Juvenile Review Board for an issue at school, and then they graduate and they get accepted to college. Like those are the success stories. So empowering everybody to be their best version of themselves and to know that they have the skills to do what they need. And sometimes you just might need a little support, right? All of us need support at different times. There's nothing wrong with that. Like having somebody that can say to you, no, you can do this. Like you've just nobody's ever taught you, right? Or you've never heard, I don't know how to fill out this application. I don't know how to advocate for myself. These are skills that are not inherently natural to people. You have to learn them as children or as adults at some point in your life, right? So if you never had that opportunity for somebody to say, no, you're allowed to advocate for yourself, you're allowed to ask these questions, how are you going to know the difference?
And you just described, I think, leadership too.
Yeah.
In a professional setting, setting people up to be as independent as they can be, but you're tailoring the support to the level that they need.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned too, that the skills not being inherent.
Yeah.
And that I love what you said, that sometimes it's like they literally just don't know. So I find so often in life when myself or other people will say, oh, how could someone do X? Or how are they that old and they don't know XYZ? And it's like, well, because they literally don't know, because no one ever taught them.
Yeah.
And it's the same in the workplace, which you get promoted to supervisor. There's things that come with that role that they don't, we both have degrees. We know there's things about managing people that you don't get necessarily with a higher education degree. So has that been your experience too, professionally?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, Andy, because one of the thoughts that I think I've always had while working at TEEG, and I think we're such a unique place in the services we're providing to people, that I think everybody who works in this building is leading others at some point, right? You may not necessarily supervise the colleagues that are in the building, but we have a volunteer coordinator who is organizing upwards of 150 volunteers a year to carry out a program, to mentor youth, to go out in the community and help us fundraise. Like that that staff member is leading that group of people, right? And our parent mentors are leading the parents that they are working with and teaching them these skills, just in the same way that their supervisors might be teaching them skills about how to run this program effectively. So I think there's always an opportunity for everybody who's working at TEEG, or even our volunteers, right? I think you could bring it even down to that level. A volunteer who is walking through our community market with a community member who is receiving a food distribution, they are leading that person in. You may be teaching them for the first time what an alternative food option is. Maybe you just got diagnosed with diabetes or heart disease and you're looking to make a dietary change. All of our food is laid out in a swap program, which is supporting wellness at pantries. So we have a red, yellow, green, which is choose often, choose sometimes, choose rarely, based on sodium, based on sugar, based on different health factors. So our market shelves are laid out that way. And so we're using even those opportunities to try to empower people and teach people. And so maybe that volunteer is physically walking someone through and helping to lead them to making a choice that's going to be better for them, right? We're never going to tell people what they have to choose, but it's an opportunity where you can be teaching and showing and empowering people. So I think no matter what you're doing here at TEEG, like there's always an opportunity for you to be leading somebody and helping to grow them.
Well, Allison, it's been, I don't know, maybe a dozen things today that you've talked about the way it's done at TEEG that to me, I would say anyone listening who nonprofit sector or not, I know they can be so different, but the so many of the things you've described about TEEG's approach to leading people would be applicable just as much at a biomedical manufacturer or an aerospace manufacturer as in the nonprofit sector. So I hope people get a lot of takeaways, and I'll have to, when we promote this episode, say, hey, we're talking about with a nonprofit leader, but it's applicable across any sector. Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back and forth, because even though we're a nonprofit, we're still a business, right? Like we're still operating that way. Nothing changes on that front. It's just we're mission driven, and I don't think that's I'm sure there's businesses out there with goals, right? I mean, they're trying to work towards something. They're trying to hit a quota or to do what they're doing. So it translates across the board. Absolutely, and I hope you'll come back. Maybe we could get together once a month, and like I said, I want you to educate me on shame sensitivity, so I can learn more about that. Fun. I would be happy to put this on my calendar once a month. Oh, great. That'd be perfect. Well, thank you so much, Andy. This has been great. And I think right along with the imposter syndrome, I think I told you off air, this is something I thought I would never get to do because it just never seemed attainable, right? It seemed like, people outside of our regular realm of everyday activity are the only people doing podcasts. So this is so fantastic. I'm so happy that you've implemented this into your training. Oh, thank you, Allison. Yeah. And I really, it made my day to, when you told me that you listen and how much you liked the Jim Zahansky interview. Jim's an incredible. He's so good. Wilson Hill is so good to us. And I listened to a little bit of Heather's episode today as well. I'm just somebody I don't always learn from being talked at. I really like to do stuff, but I really like to have noise in the background, right? So when I'm sitting in my office and I'm just kind of working through or editing something, it's nice to just have that conversation in the background and real life conversation with people that I could run into, at the grocery store, and know that there are people around in our everyday lives that feel the same way and they want to grow just so many of us do. Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because, I'd like to get some authors on and things like that. But for the most part, I told our producer, we do this with a company called Piccolo Podcasts. And I told him, I said, I know people with gigantic LinkedIn followings. I understand why you're recommending booking them, but I was but for me, I want to talk to people in the community. Like you said, I want to talk to real people who maybe would touch on some of the same things as the big LinkedIn figures. But to me, it's more meaningful coming from those of us that are, salt of the earth professionals doing good work in the community, are dealing with the same things. So it means a lot to know that resonated with you, because that's really what I was going for. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking my my suggestion or my self invitation to be a guest.
Oh, of course. And like I said, you're welcome back anytime, Allison. I would recommend anyone listening, if you're not familiar with TEEG, find TEEG online. One of many great local nonprofits in Northeastern Connecticut doing good work. And as we learned today, with great leadership approaches and philosophy. So thank you so much for joining us, Allison.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's Better Workdays. If this episode helped you, then there's a good chance Real Custom Training could help your entire organization. Visit us online at realcustomtraining.com, and you can learn all about how our leadership development programs are helping people work better together.